Good morning, everybody. This is Jinen here. Good morning to all our attendees from the US, and very good afternoon from all the attendees who have come from the UK and the Europe, and good evening to all from India and Asia. Thank you very much for attending the call or attending the webinar. And I'm Jinen, and it's a very exciting thing that we're going to talk about how we have built a very complex CRM without coding using a no-code platform, and that's what the agenda for us on this webinar is. Just a quick heads up on how we're going to do this. It's 1 hour long webinar, and on your panel you will see mechanisms to ask questions or maybe raise your point. We're going to take all the questions right up in the during the end of the presentation. So bear with me for the whole time, and I hope this adds value to for what you have signed up for. Right. So thank you very much, and let's get started. So just to give you a quick brief, CRM is in our parlance is a lead management system, and the whole idea is why we built this is obviously we have leads and we need to take care of managing the leads with our inside sales team. So the idea is, we wanted to integrate this with a lot of features. It had to be cutting edge because we cannot really, for us to function and for our inside sales to function, we had to have a great tool in place. So we used to use the CRM earlier, and we started switching to a newer tool, which is this now. Very ever since it got a bit more mature, right? But so what we're going to do is we're going to break this down, this webinar, a bit into 3 or 4 pieces. But before I begin, a quick introduction about me. I'm a computer engineer from Mumbai, India. I and my co-founder, we co-founded this company DronaHQ in 2007, and we went live with no code in 2017. We went beta live in 2018, 2019, early 2019, and right now we are fully functional. So that's a little bit about me and DronaHQ both put together. And then I think a little bit about today's agenda now. So I'm going to give you a quick brief on no-code platform for all people who are not really aware about what is no-code and how does it make sense in this new world of where you are looking at building digital tools at much faster pace without really needing a lot of coding knowledge. How could you really spin great complex systems without really having much of knowledge on coding? So that's one. Then we're going to take a look into the CRM application that that we have built on DronaHQ, and then we'll have a live session around how do we build things from scratch. So that's a little bit about what we are going to do. So let me just straight away get into no-code platform for all the newbies who are there on who have not really been not done much with no-code. I think it's going to benefit. So essentially, no-code is for building apps rapidly. That's that's the core purpose of why you should really look at no-code, right? And the idea is typically a no-code platform comes with a visual elements or a visual tool with pre-built components of for making your software. When I say these components, pre-built components, we are talking about it could be form elements, it could be for the UI interface, or it could be elements for your backend systems, or it could be elements for just about visual elements, right? So it could be anything. The idea is with a visual tool, you should be in a position to build all your front-end applications as well as back-end applications without really need to go to any part of actual coding. So all it means is you just add your logic and you are up and running in quick time. So that's the way this happens. Okay, so this is a drag and drop visual tool for building apps, and then we have a mechanism to add logic. So the way you add logic is by adding validations, and you go about adding some visibility rules to this. So that's another panel that we have in the tool that allows you to add that logic. And third is the backend side of things. So we have a visual tool for for orchestrating your process and letting your process come alive. So that's a third tool that I have, right? So it's all about how creative can you get, or how well you architect your systems, and you would be in a position to build some extremely complex systems. I mean, on this platform, right? So we're gonna take a look at that, right? One another important thing as a part of the workflow builder is we also have a mechanism to add third-party services, and the idea is everything is available at as a service, and you go about configuring it the way you would like to see in your system, right? So that's yet another piece that we have, which we're going to explore when we're going to get into the demo phase, right? Uh, Unlike a lot of other no-code tools, we also have a database built into our platform. So for if you're building a system right from scratch, say for example, in our case, we were trying to make our own CRM system, so we had to have a database in place. But let's assume if you're trying to build a system which is interfacing with your existing system, it could be like you have a CRM and you just want to create a new interface for it, right? So if that's your use case, then all that you need to do is build an interface, and you may not really need the database, right? But however, as a part of the platform, we do have that as well as a building block. Now, moving forward, we have once you deploy your applications, once you are ready to go live, and on a single click you would go live across multiple devices. It is from mobile as well as web, and in mobile it works across Android and iOS. So just be and the way you're going to manage your entire application and its life cycle is with a cloud-based mechanism via which you manage who gets to log in into your applications, who gets to see what applications, and which applications needs to live and which applications needs to sunset. So you have a cloud-based mechanism to control the whole thing. And on my last slide to this introduction to DronaHQ, it's ISO 27001 and SOC Type 2 certified platform, and it comes with a out-of-the-box plugins for connecting it to your Active Directory, be it SAML or via SAML or OAuth2, and yeah, it can also, since we have a mobile apps also, so they can be integrated with your EMM or MEM that you may have in-house. So that's a little bit about the introduction about about DronaHQ. Now I think what we'll do is we'll try to go take a live demo of the CRM that has already been built, which is the second part of our agenda, right? Now what we're going to do is we're just going to swing into the the current system that we have over here, right? And what I'm going to do is just going to take you a step back and into my into the launcher of this particular tool, right? So that's the way we have. So we have a tool built which has been commissioned DHQ signups, right? So as the name says, it's more like a CRM, but it starts from web signups, and then it goes all the way up till going and clocking an order, right? So it covers, we call it as a lead to order as a process, but from a tool perspective, we just call it as a sign up, right? And depending on who the user is, you would see multiple leads depending on who the user is, right? So for example, if the user is Kinjal, she will see only the leads that are assigned to her. So on my login, I can select a rep, but on her login, she will not be able to select a rep. That's that was a requirement, right? Now, what are we going to do in this particular CRM system is we have a bunch of things that we are going to showcase today. Okay, so one is how do I add a lead, right? That's one. Number two, typically the way to add a lead is generally it needs to get integrated with a website. So we're going to show you an integration with a web. So that's thing number two that we're going to do. And then third, we're going to show you how that, once somebody signs up, how it goes into the database. So that's a third thing that we're going to see. Fourth is we're going to, good CRM, you would need a little bit of, background threads to work. Something called as lead enrichment, that is to go and get more data about about the person or about the company which is signing up. We call it as a lead enrichment. We're going to take a look at that as well. And then we also have like a good CRM should have, it should have a capability to call leads, right? So it should have a built-in mechanism to give a call to your to your customer or to your prospect. So that's we call it as a click to call. So we're going to see that as well. And fifth, which is in today's world where people are not really moving around, so you may have Zoom or meeting invites that needs to be sent out to people. So we have an integration that we've done over here with Zoom. So we're going to show you how do we send a Zoom invite to the users. Fifth is a very interesting, or rather a very important aspect of any CRM is the communication that we should do with the user. So we have a built-in mechanism that we have built inside of sending emails right from within this tool. That's 6. And 7 is we also, if you're sending an email, that we would also like to track whether that email is getting delivered, or is that email even being noticed and opened by your prospect. So depending on we're going to see that as well. And depending on if somebody is opening the email versus not opening the email, we also are computing a live engagement score. So that's also, we would try and see how it looks like, right? So these are some of the brief things that we're going to cover in the next 15 to 20 minutes. And once we're done with that, we move to how did we do it, right? So that's the 3 aspects in which we're going to see this, right? So let's begin, right? So let's begin. How do I add a lead? So we have a button built over here via which we can add a lead, right? But however, this would make more sense if at all I can add a lead via a web page. So in the context of the web page, we go to DronaHQ.com/sign up. Now this is where typically all this is how we have all got it integrated right over here. So the fields that you see over here, let's assume I'm going to use my colleague's email address over here, his name, and then maybe company, okay, and then I'm going to just put my colleague's email address, right? And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to just put maybe as number which might be his actual number, so that you see this. Just a minute. Okay, here we go. Okay, yeah, right. And then I'm gonna use his actual number. So let me just have this here. Okay. Right, so, and then we're going to put some purpose on this. Let's assume make apps on my own, and I want to make a CRM, right? So here we go. At the moment, okay, so it looks like he has already signed up, right? So we can use a pseudo ID for him, right? And let's get this going, right? So now this should be good to go. right? So the moment I do this, right, what generally would happen is inside my application, right, we will have, let's go back to Jinin, right, because this is going to be showing up over here. And as you could see, the first thing on my screen, right, is him, right? So now, typically, the way this works is, like in the moment I click on this particular lead, right, I should get, details about this particular lead, right? So let me just quickly see this. He signed up, LinkedIn details, his email, that he used to sign up, and then a little bit details about the company and the employees and other stuff. And it also tries to tell that what is the next action date when I should go and be in touch with this particular person. Now that's basically like, the way we have configured the next action date is again a rule that is very, very specific to us, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, what we've done. And if you could see on this, we have 3 additional buttons. One is transfer this lead to another colleague, right? Or maybe see if I want to do more activity, or I would want to go and enrich more data about this particular lead, right? So there are 3 things that I could do on top of this particular card, right? So now let's look at each one of them. Okay, the first one is a call, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that my calling system is in place. So we use a third-party tool over here, which I'm integrated in this, right? And we call this as now I'm available over here. I'll make sure that my calling system is in place, right? So once this is in place, I'm just going to make sure that I'm calling this guy, right? So now for me to call him, now as you can see, this is already going and actually making a call right from here, right? So I could go back, and that's the way I would not really make a phone call, but I have a calling which is kind of integrated over here, right? Another thing that probably for your interest and for your benefit, I would also show you that this is how the entry of this particular lead would come over here into the database, right? So just to make sure that I show you that how a database gets maintained, right? And then the calling just happened. Now let's assume that the call went well, and now we have an actionable is to set up a demo with this particular person, right? So typically the way what I would do is I would set up a demo with him. Now let's assume that my demo with him is at maybe at 7 in the evening, maybe at 7:30 p.m. And let's assume this is on maybe on 25th, or let's say 28th of April, and here we go, right? So now we add a topic. This is DronaHQ demo, and then we add a description, Zoom call to see a demo, right? And we do a quick submit. Now, if things go well, then on my Zoom, you would see a new meeting being set up for 28th of April, right? So what we will do is we'll quickly take a look on the Zoom as well, right, in a bit. But for now, what you could see is, we get some more details about this particular thing. That user has not verified the link which was sent in the email, so which means you may need to follow up with the verification. Now this is very, very specific to DronaHQ, and this is where the actual power of no-code really comes. Because prior to this, the kind of CRMs that we were using, we could not integrate so deeply and get real-time analytics whether this person has clicked and has actually had an account. Now this is extremely important for us, because if somebody does not have an account, and it just doesn't make sense, to tell how's the going, are you enjoying playing with DronaHQ, are you able to build something relevant with DronaHQ? No, it doesn't make sense, right? So all these things becomes irrelevant if this doesn't happen. in that case, my next step would be to actually send an email to him and ask him and verify whether this, why don't you why don't you click on verification, right? So we would do a simple email here, right? DronaHQ verification link, and we will just say, hi, right? Oh, sorry, I just lost this one, my pop-up, right? So go back and hi there. Why don't you? Looks like you haven't, right? You haven't clicked on verify on your mail, right? And let me know if you need any help, right? We just want to be a bit more kind, and here we go, right? It could happen that he might have used an email which might not be his, right? So let's see, once we send this email, how do things go? So yeah, your email has been sent, right? Now, let's say, if this is done, as you could see, this email has been sent. My bad that I'm using heavy bold over here. I could have changed that, right? So the way to change that is like, just remove, the bold over there using this, thing over here. I would remove the bold and so on and so forth, right? So it all depends on how you want to do things, right? So we have a rich text box over here which allows you to craft your emails in a better way, right? Now what I'm going to do is I just refreshed and now I see that this email has been deferred. It's unlikely that had this been an email account which is not a pseudo account, it would have got delivered and he would have seen this email, right? But right now, since it's not a main email, it's a pseudo email, so it has got deferred, and which means unless and until I don't see this as going as delivered, he will not get a higher lead engagement score. Either ways, what I could now see is, let me see, if at all I would want to take a look at what's my schedule, what's my next thing that I want to do while I chat with with Himal, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a quick look on what's my schedule looking like for him, right? Since this is not really a verified link as yet, I do not have a schedule otherwise with him, right? So let me see if I can, I mean, had it been a verified link, I would have seen some sort of a schedule which had been, which could have been formed, right? And let's assume if I did a phone call, I could have marked it as complete and I could have moved on, right? And I could have added my notes as well over here. So that's a little bit about how do you go about playing around with this particular system, right? Going back to Kinjal's view, right now she has nothing over here. So let me go back and let me see on my view itself, right? So now I go back here, and if I would want to enrich this lead, that's yet another functionality that I have out here. Now, enrich is a mechanism to go and tell your system that we need more data for this particular user, right? Now, what it does is it has got internally wired and connected to a third-party system which does this job. So if you are a CRM, right, and if you see anything like a Salesforce or Fresh Sales or any other CRM that you might be using, right, then it will give you a mechanism, or maybe HubSpot, it gives you a mechanism to have more details about your prospect. Now that's something we call it as an enrichment, right? So the way we go about doing this is like, just by clicking on a submit button over here, and now this would do the job of getting the enriched data about, about this particular prospect, right? Now it will take a little bit of time, but if it does its job, then in this one, if as you could see, let me just see where the lead name is contains Himal, right? I will just go and I will apply this, right? So if that, as you could see, right, this lead over here has, we will see this to be populated over here, right? Now, now this is a response code that we have got, which is 200, right? And it has now given a lot of information about this particular lead, right? About the company and everything else over here. So now if you see this, let's go back to Himal, right? And now if you could see, a lot of enrichment has already happened, right? As you could say. Coming back, this is what we have populated in the database. It has given the size, the port line numbers, it has estimated the other stuff. It has said the email ID is valid and account is not yet verified because he has not yet clicked on the link. So this is how you could further up your engagement game on this, right? And as you could see, the engagement score, since I've sent one email out to him, an engagement score of 1 is defined over here, right? Now let me just quickly open up my Zoom so that let's see whether the Zoom invite for 28th of April has been set or not, right? So let me just see if I can sign in, right? And let me just try to sign in. And if it has happened, great. Otherwise, maybe some issue with my connectivity between DronaHQ and Zoom, right? So we will just see whether for Tuesday, and as we have here on 28th of April, right, this particular meeting, DronaHQ demo has been set up, right? And if I see this, so this is also a functioning thing, right? So that's the way this tool is wired, and it just did whatever probably which any other tool would have done for us, right? So now that's a fully functional CRM for you, right? Now let's get into the specifics on how do we go about building such a complex application. And here we go, we switch into the mode, which is the most exciting mode about how do you do it all by yourself, right? Now, as you could see, this is my landing page on DronaHQ, right? The moment you get a screen like this, you can keep adding more screens and you can keep building it all more and more from here, right? So now there is no stopping, there's no end line, there's no finish line. You can keep going and you can keep building, right? So what did we do? Let's start with, this is my first screen up wherein I put in a couple of lists over here. Now this list is actually what we are seeing right over here, right? So now let's take a quick look at this, right? In the screen, right? So what we have done over here is we've actually added a couple of formulas, right? And this formula is actually doing a job of taking the data from the sheet, and on validate, it's actually going to go and get that particular data, right? So if I'm going to verify over here, if I'm going to do a quick review over here, this is what it's going to do, right? Let's just wait up for this to spin, right? And just wanted to show you that on my screen on the top left, right? I could have also seen this in English, German, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, right? So while I'm building my own CRM, I can even think about adding as many languages as I would like, right? So here we go. This is exactly now the way it shows up, right? Now I can as you could see Himal over here, right? And if I click on Himal, it's supposed to show me another screen, which is here right over here, right? So I can change my screen dynamics. I can make it a little bit larger, and here we go. If it's larger, it will auto adjust this, right? So here we go. So now that's my screen number 1, right? Now the point is, let me see if I add a new screen for you guys. Let's see if I had to add it, all together, from scratch. So I would have gone to my screens. I would have picked up a list control, which is a part of the display over here, and I would have just dragged and dropped this, right? Now in the list, I would have gone about looking up this particular sheet. which I have, which has been embedded for this particular application, signups. And within the signups, I would have taken lead name, organization, phone, email. I would have taken MQL status, lead type, notes, probably just about everything that you see, which is available as a part of the data that we've collected. For now, I'm just going to use this much, right? I'm just going to make sure that my list goes away, right? And then, when my list goes away, now I still have a few things which are written over here, which probably might not look good. And I would just say my sign up list, right? So just make sure I can write this up. Now it still has a few icons on the left and on the right. And what I would do is, on my left, I would go and exit this particular app. And on my right, I'm just going to switch this off because I don't need anything on the right, right? Now, the next point that I have is a subheading, which I'm just going to remove this. So now this is all looking good, right? Now let's take a quick look. If I'm going to do this, right, and if I'm going to validate, this is going to throw up a lot of data, because this is now looking at the whole sheet, and there is no filter added to this, right? So let's see, so here is the data that it has actually added, and it has brought from the whole thing. So there's a huge amount of data, right? But let's assume you want to add a little bit of filters on this. So let's assume you want to go back into this, right? And you pick up the same columns again: lead name, organization, phone, email, right? Rep name. Okay. Now let's say you want to add some filters that the rep name is equal to, or it contains maybe the name Jinen, or maybe we pick it up from the user email, right? So right now, these are the keywords. This is user specific. Based on who is logged in, you can get some system specific parameters, right? But for now, I'm just gonna hard code this to Jinen, right, which is my name, right? So as you could see on the top, it's automatically creating a formula for the ones who don't know how to create this formula, right? But I'm also made sure that I would also want this descending based on the leads which have come up first. I should see them first, right? For now, let's add a descending parameter on this, and let's run this again, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this query again. Now you're going to see leads which are only meant for Jinen, right? Now let's try to play around with this. Let's try Himal in this, right? The moment I put Himal in this, now I'm just going to get leads which are assigned to Himal, right? Now that's my colleague, and he might have a few leads as well, right? So let's see, this brings up more data, right? So it's taking a little bit of time while this query loads up, right? So here we go. Let's try to run it with Kinjal, because for Kinjal we couldn't see any lead, right? So here we go. Now let's try to transfer one case to Kinjal and see if she now gets a lead, right? So let's go back and let's add one case to Kinjal, right? So let's see how do we transfer a case. So I'm going to transfer this case to Kinjal, right? And submit. Here we go. So the moment I do this, and once I get a success, so this is successful, I go back here and I save and validate this again. Here we go. Now Himal is assigned to Kinjal. All cool. We are done. We are sorted, right? So this is a thing which works fine. But now what we have over here is, this is hard coded to Kinjal. So every time I'm going to play this, it's just going to show me leads only for Kinjal, which is something I would have. I mean, let's assume I don't like to see it that way. I would want to see a red, like the way I had it in my app, right? So how do we do that, right? So here we go. Now this is going to look up, and it's found the lead, right? So this is cool. But now let's say I want to make this dynamic, right? So I'm going to look up, I'm going to invoke a shortcut, right? I'm going to add drop down, and here let's say I want to select a rep over here, right? So what we do is here I'm just going to copy one formula, right? Since I do not want to redo this formula again, I'll just go here. I'm just going to click this. I'm just going to click formula here, and here I'm just going to add the formula here, zoom, right? Now this is a little bit of complex formula in itself because we have used a formula with a unique function which has been actually returned right over here. So it's not all that low code in my sense because I've added one custom function, right? And here is that custom function of what it does. It does simple things. It adds some of the static values right into my application, right? So let's see how does this load up, right? So now if this has to work right, now this is going to give me all the users, right, who are actually an active user from my sales team, right, and they are not deactivated, okay, and they are all like working in DronaHQ currently at this moment, not the ones who are who have been in the company and who are no longer in the company. That's a simple rule that I want to add, right? So I want to take care of the life cycle. So here we go. Now drop down does not look good, so let's just add select rep over here, right? Select a rep, select sales rep, right? Now while this is cool, let's take a little bit of uh, quick preview back again. Now let's see how does this look, right? So if this looks great, then we will stitch this data which is right now coming in the drop down, and we'll find it into the list. So how do we do that, right? Because right now, for now, we have made this interdependent. So if I'm going to select a rep over here, it's not going to make any change into. So now I have all the reps coming up over here, but it's not really doing much, right? So let's assume if I'm going to put my colleague Akhil on this, it's not going to make a change. It's not going to. If I put Harsha, no change as well, right? So here we go. Let's now try to stitch this, right? So what happens is the moment I put a drop down, everything gets a unique identity or a unique ID for every control which gets created. Now I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste this instead of the hard-coded Kindle over here that you could see. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to use this, right? So let's see if this validates. Oh, oops, it has taken drop down. So I'm going to use the name of what I've just added over here, right? So the name of this is select sales rep, right? Select sales rep, and yes, now we find it here. So now let's do a little bit of trick on this, and let's see if this has become a bit more dynamic. If it has, then we can move further and we can add a little bit of more data to this, right? So let's take a quick preview and let's move forward. Right, so here we go. In the meantime, I'm just trying to see to all my colleagues who are attending this webinar, if you could let me know if there are any questions, please get them going, right? So please feel free to add any questions. So yeah, so this is populated and this is not really showing up anything, right? So now let's take a look at Kindle over here, right? So now this has become contextual, right? So let's see, I add Jinen and I get a long list of users for Jinen. So this is all working, all great. So my first step of my sign up is now created, right? Now let's do a little bit of more tricks on this, right? So now on this particular control, what we want to do is, I don't want to navigate, but let's assume I want to see a detailed view about this particular lead, right? So what we will do is, or maybe we can have a selection over here, right? So now what we'll do is let's add a tray on this. Another detailed view is the name of the control, right, that we're going to use inside. and let's see how does that show up, right? But before we do that, now I wanted to show you some more aspects around like how did we add a prospect form out here, right? So now for us to add a new lead into the system, we had to create a form. The moment I create the form, now this form is like made up of simple controls. Some are text controls, some are email controls, and some are simple notes, right? And the whole point is, how did we get this stitched to to a web page? So by default, every application or every form that we have over here, it generates two things over here. One is it gives you an API or for you to bind if you want to create your own form, or if you want to create an embed, right? And you want to use this as an embed into your web application, you could go ahead and you can embed this right inside this, right? So there are two options via which you could do this, right? Now the point is, using this, we can embed this. Now what happens is once you embed this inside, now is a magic, because now you want to do a lot of things, right? So what we've done inside is we have, first thing first, we are inserting the data right into the sign up, which is the sheet that we are actually using inside this. We're taking all the records, whatever that we get from the form, and we are putting it right inside this, right? That's step number one. Number two, we are actually using a third-party service, right? Which is actually going and doing the job of enriching the lead. Because now we have a lead, but we also want more information about this particular lead, right? So that's what we are doing next. Now, third aspect that what we are trying to do is, the output of this particular data, right, or output of this particular step, right, which is, let's see what this gives, right? Now, this is a third-party service. It gets us a whole bunch of data, right, which we are adding as a variable into my workflow, and I'm using it here to insert this right inside this particular same sheet that you're seeing, and into the same row which has gotten created out of my step one, right? And all this data is now getting inserted right inside my sheet, which is what we call as a completion of the enrichment process. Now, what we have further done is, since we run an inside sales process in 3 regions, right, for every region, depending on the sign up number, it gets going into the person, into an appropriate teams, into the appropriate teams bucket, right? So this is how we use this. But also what really happens over here is we also set up a cadence, right? Now that's a very interesting thing, because this is like, if you have seen anything like outreach.io or setting up a sales sequence. So we have made our own sales sequence using a cadence, right? And that's something that we have done over here. Now, once the cadence is also set up, right, now you could see that for every rep, a set of activities are already pre-filled, right? So that's happening right over here. Now, another important aspect over here is, once we also use some third-party services like Intercom, which is right here that you could see, right? So the Intercom is something that we use for knowledge-based articles, and also for making sure that if the user needs any help, they can ask for help over here, right? So what we are doing over here is, we are also integrating this with Intercom, right? So with the Intercom, when we are integrating this, we're actually using an API service, and we are integrating a few things right inside over here. So depending on if, this basically is configured in a way that if Intercom is, whether it should send emails by itself or it should not. Now that's again, done a little bit manually over here. But the whole point is, it's completely automated, whether we want live automated emails to go to sign up or not, basis this. Now again, with the standard CRM module, we wouldn't have really got any of these features, but here we could configure it depending on our requirement, right? So that's another thing which is happening, right? So now that's one on how we are dealing with adding a prospect inside the database or inside DronaHQ sign up database, right? Now another one which is very important over here is the way we are sending emails, right? So way we are sending emails over here is actually another sheet over here, right, on my screen number 14, right? So on my screen number 14, we use this. I'm sorry, I've not renamed this. I'll just rename this and email, right? This would have become easier for me to find out, right? So now on the send email screen, if you could see, we have the email address, and now there's a workflow which is over here. Now for sending emails, we use another third-party service, which is actually a SendGrid, right? Now, what generally happens with this is to add any other new activity, right? For example, right now adding SendGrid, we have a bunch of these third-party services that you could use and you could add. If you don't have a third-party service, you can straight away use an API block, right? Thankfully, we have SendGrid, which is over here, which is available. Intercom, Zoom, all of these things are available, right? So using this, we just use SendGrid, and then we just configured, right? We just added an account, and after adding an account, we configured what needs to go where, and boom, right? We took up a few things, right, as an output, for example, message ID or response code, and depending on that, we just added this back, into the sales activity sheet, right? So we're adding it into an activity. Now, why we are adding this into an activity is because we want to reread, whether the email has been read again, yes or no. Now, that's something that SendGrid as a service allows you to configure. So we are just trying to use this, right? The moment this particular task is done, it will go ahead and add the SendGrid parameters that it did in its previous activity, like the message ID and other stuff. It will add right inside this particular sheet, which is sales cadence, right? And once it adds over here, it basically it has even an intelligence to tell to the user that something went bad and the email did not go. So if the email did not go, the initiator would know that your email from sign up tool failed, right? So it has a little bit of fail-safe mechanism also embedded right inside this. But more interestingly, what is also happening is we've also registered a webhook, right? Because SendGrid has a capability to it has webhooks, and basis which you could let the users know, or rather once the webhook has been set up, right? So I'll tell you if this webhook gets triggered by SendGrid, right, then we get to know whether the email has been delivered, opened, or whatever, right? Whatever that SendGrid knows about that specific email, it will tell us, and we will update this right inside, again back into the cadence, and we'll also update into the sign up. So this is where we basically we add a logic, custom logic, that if somebody has opened up this particular email, right, then we give them a specific score. If somebody has not opened the email, right, for example, if the event, if this email has gone bounced, then we basically make the score go 0, something like that, right? So we have added some variables over here, basis which we are we are putting up these scores here, right? So see how did we now this is cool part. Now this is imagining how did we set up if the webhook would have received by DronaHQ, this is what it's supposed to do. Now this is set up, but how do we set up a webhook? Now that's an interesting one. On this particular tool, we have automation, and within the automation, we have used SendGrid webhook, right? Now webhook allows us to we basically took the SendGrid URL, okay, that where it's gonna we give this URL to SendGrid, and the moment we tested this, SendGrid got back to us with a lot of data. Depending on this data, now this entire SendGrid workflow, whatever that we had written over here, it has got configured, right? And this is the way a webhook got configured in DronaHQ. SendGrid calls this webhook, and the webhook calls the workflow. right? So that's another complex thing that we were able to accomplish using this. And the last thing that we also have over here is Zoom. Now Zoom is, again, like, if you could see, it does a few things, right? Sending a Zoom invite. So, it takes up the data from, like, whom you want to send a URL to, or where you want to set up a meeting. So it takes up all this information again from the form from where we filled, and then the moment it executes, it gives us a URL, right? So this is a bunch of bunch of things that that Zoom does, right? And we have taken the URL over here, right? So if you see in this particular one that we just sent to Himal, right? I mean, like, we can use this back over here, right? We just again filter that by the lead email contains Himal. Let's assume, right? Let's go here and let's see this. Okay, it has not got anything here. So Himal, right? And here we go, right? So what we've done is, let's see, here is the demo that has been sent, right? And if this has gone right, then Zoom URL would be set up, right? So this is how the Zoom URL would kind of show up over here, right? So this is the way, like, we picked up this particular thing, and using an update sheet, which is again a ready block which is available in DronaHQ. We took this and we put this right inside Zoom meeting URL, which is where you can see Zoom meeting URL, right? Which is the name of this particular column, right? So yeah, here we go. If I want to add more columns, I can go ahead and I can add more columns, right? It can be a GPS, rich text, whatever, right? And then, here we go. I don't need any more columns and I'm good, right? So here we go. So I am approaching last 2 minutes of my presentation, and rather, I can now take up some questions. I know there's a lot more to cover, but we don't have a lot of time here. So I'm just going to take a quick pause over here and switch back to my questions right over here. So let me see if I have any questions. If I have not, then great. But let's see. Oh yeah, we have a few questions here, which is there are a lot of questions actually. So let's take up a few ones. How we authenticate users and customers. So it's a very good question which has been asked. So let me just quickly show you how do we go about authenticating users. So let me just show this. Let this go back inside. So on DronaHQ, we have a user column over here, right? So within this users management, what we have is the moment I go to users, I can add more users, right? So this is where you can add more users. Now, which is like, how do I enter this app, right? So let's, the way we control who gets to add, or the way you can come in this app is, let's log out from here for a minute, right? So DronaHQ handles the user management by default. It comes with a, by its own user management system, right? So if I log in again, right, I can log in, right? Let's assume if I add a on this, right, it will say this is not a valid email. Or if I add, let's assume .on, not an authorized user, which means DronaHQ takes care of doing this particular bit, right? So the way it does is, if you want to add a new user, you can go ahead and you can add a new user right from here, right? So that's an answer to the question. If you want to, we have two mechanisms to add a user. If you want to auto enable him with a password, you can do that, or you can just add a name, an email ID, and an activation email will go to the user. So either ways you could do that, right? You can add in bulk as well. So to add to add users in bulk is another option you have. The moment you are adding a user, you can even assign it to a specific group, right? So if you could see on my screen, I have a bunch of applications. So which user should get what application can get defined right from here. That's one. Another way to keep to add users is by going to the settings, and within the settings you can kind of like integrate it with your depending on the plan that you have. In the enterprise plan, you can integrate it with just a minute, with there is integrations. Using integrations, you can integrate this with with your AD or any of those things, right? So be it Azure AD or via SAML or via OAuth or something on those lines, right? So those are some of the other options that we have, right? So this is the way you can do it. And then who gets to be an admin, who cannot be an admin, is again something that you can decide right from here. So once you have an admin access, can have an access to Studio, and then they can start creating applications, right? So let me come back in this. If there are any more questions, yes. So what is actually another question that I have is price per user. Well, the price, the user which connect to the app or using DronaHQ. So that's again a very good question that I have over here. So anybody who is a user who gets added on this, with this, is considered as a user. But if you are going to create a web form, okay, and you're going to make that available as as a form, like the way you are seeing this over here. For example, you can just take this particular thing, right, and you can give this as to the user, right, and he can fill up the form. And in that case, you do not really need that particular one person who's filling up the form is not considered as a user, right? So that's just to answer a question that I had around around the pricing bit, and again, who's considered as a user, right? So let me see if there are any other questions which needs to be addressed. Okay, so I don't think I have many more questions here. So, and I'm at the back end of my presentation. So thank you very much. I hope everybody could find some value with this presentation and can now use DronaHQ. Maybe if you have not yet signed up, you can sign up. There is a 30-day free account that you get, and you can play around and you can create your applications. Feel free, there is a chat box that you get, just in case if you have any questions, you can run up to us with this chat box, or the chat box is a lot of articles and help material using which you can go ahead and you can build your you can do it all by yourself. And either ways, my team is going to be reachable on some of the email addresses or within this chat box itself. So feel free to reach out to us. And yeah, thank you very much. I hope guys enjoyed. So have a lovely day ahead, and thank you very much.